Ashoka the Great, who ruled the Mauryan Empire during its golden age, was known for his renunciation of war and promotion of Buddhism. He also developed the concept of Dhamma, a system of ethics based on Buddhist principles. The Mauryan Empire was one of the largest empires in ancient history, stretching from Iran to almost the entirety of the Indian subcontinent. Ashoka, who inherited this empire from his grandfather Chandragupta, maintained control over it through following the political advice outlined in Chanakya's Arthashastra. Ashoka means without sorrow, which was most likely his given name. He is referred to in his edicts, carved in stone, as Devanampiya Piyadasi, which means beloved of the gods. He was supposedly ruthless early in his reign, until he led a campaign against the kingdom of Kalinga around 260 BCE. The carnage, destruction, and death from this conflict caused Ashoka to renounce war. In time, he converted to Buddhism and devoted himself to peace through his concept of Dhamma. Most of what is known of him, outside of his edicts, comes from Buddhist texts which treat him as a model of conversion and virtuous behavior. Even though he was one of the most successful kings of a very large and well-known ancient empire, his name vanished from history until 1837 when James Prinsep, a British scholar specializing in Eastern cultures, found references to him. Since then, Ashoka has come to be recognized as one of the most fascinating ancient monarchs for his decision to renounce war, his insistence on religious tolerance, and his peaceful efforts in establishing Buddhism as a major world religion. Ashoka's name is present in the Puranas. However, there is little to no information regarding his life. The majority of what we know about him, including details from his youth, victory and reign following the Kalinga campaign, and eventual renunciation of violence, come held within Buddhist sources which many people believe contain more fictitious stories than actual historical events. Though we do not know of his exact date of birth, it is said that he was one of 100 sons born to his father Bindusara's many wives. His mother Subhadrangi, or Dharma in another account, is noted as a Brahmin's daughter and Bindusara's primary wife in some texts, while others depict her as a woman of lower social status and merely a minor wife. The story of the 100 sons of Bindusara is dismissed by most scholars who believe Ashoka was the second son of 4. His older brother Susima was the heir apparent and crown prince, and Ashoka's chances of ever assuming power were therefore slim, and even slimmer because his father disliked him. He had an elite education, was skilled in multiple forms of combat, and was almost certainly taught the Arthashastra principles, even though he wasn't a contender for the throne. He was just one of several royal sons. The Arthashastra is a treatise covering many different subjects related to society but, primarily, is a manual on political science providing instruction on how to rule effectively. It is attributed to Chanakya, Chandragupta's prime minister, who chose and trained Chandragupta to become king. When Chandragupta abdicated in favor of Bindusara, the latter is said to have been trained in the Arthashastra and so, almost certainly, would have been his sons. According to legend, when Ashoka was sent at the age of 18 from Pataliputra to Takshashila in order to quell a revolt, his father Bindusara provided him with an army but no weapons. The arms were given to Ashoka by supernatural forces. This same legend claims that Ashoka was merciful to the people who lay down their arms upon his arrival. No historical account survives of Ashoka's campaign at Taxila. It is accepted as historical fact based on suggestions from inscriptions and place names, but the details are unknown. Having succeeded at Taxila, Bindusara next sent his son to govern the commercial center of Ujjain, which he also succeeded in. Buddhism was not a widely practiced religion in India during this time and competed for followers with other similar belief systems, such as Sanatana Dharma, also known as Hinduism. Ashoka was in Ujjain when Taxila rebelled again and Bindusara sent Susima. However, Bindusara fell ill before Susima could quell the rebellion and recalled his son. The king's ministers favored Ashoka as successor though, so he was crowned upon Bindusara's death. Afterwards, he had Susima executed by throwing him into a charcoal pit. Legends also claim he then executed his other 99 brothers, but scholars maintain he killed only 2 and that the youngest, one Ashoka, renounced all claim to rule and became a Buddhist monk. After he gained power, many say that he became a ruthless despot who only looked out for himself and his pleasures. He supposedly enjoyed torturing those sentenced to his prison, which was called Ashoka's Hell or Hell on Earth. The kingdom of Kalinga was located south of Pataliputra near the coast and gained great wealth through trade. The Mauryan Empire surrounded Kalinga, and it appears that both empires benefited from their commercial interactions. Though the reasoning is unknown, in 260 BC, Ashoka invaded and waged war on the kingdom of Kalinga. Inhabitants were slaughtered by the thousands with 100,000 estimated dead, 150,000 more deported, and even more left to die from disease or famine. Afterwards, it is said, Ashoka walked across the battlefield, looking upon the death and destruction, and experienced a profound change of heart. Ashoka then renounced war and embraced Buddhism, but this was not the sudden conversion it is usually given as, but rather a gradual acceptance of Buddha's teachings which he may, or may not, have already been acquainted with. While it's possible Ashoka wasn't well educated in Buddhism, he chose to follow the religion after his spiritual journey post-Kalinga. He saw value in Buddha's teachings and helped spread the Buddhist school of thought during his reign as a monarch. According to the accepted account, once Ashoka embraced Buddhism, he embarked on a path of peace and ruled with justice and mercy. Whereas he had earlier engaged in the hunt, he now went on pilgrimage, and while formerly the royal kitchen slaughtered hundreds of animals for feasts, he now instituted vegetarianism. He made himself available to his subjects at all times, addressed what they considered wrongs, and upheld the laws which benefited all, not only the upper class and wealthy. However, modern-day scholars have questioned the accuracy of this depiction, noting that Ashoka did not return the kingdom to the survivors of the Kalinga campaign, nor is there any evidence he called back the 150,000 who had been deported. He made no effort at disbanding the military, and there is evidence that military might continue to be used in putting down rebellions and maintaining the peace. All of these observations are accurate interpretations of the evidence, but ignore the central message of the Arthashastra, which would have essentially been Ashoka's training manual just as it had been his father's and grandfather's. The Arthashastra reveals that a powerful state is only possible with an equally mighty ruler. A weak leader will prioritize themselves and their own whims. A smart leader thinks about what would benefit the majority of people. In following this principle, Ashoka would not have been able to implement Buddhism fully as a new governmental policy because, first of all, he needed to continue to present a public image of strength, and secondly, most of his subjects were not Buddhist and would have resented that policy. If Ashoka had regretted the Kalinga campaign and felt remorse for his actions, he still would not have been able to reinstate Kalinga or reverse his earlier policy of deporting people. This is because it would make him look weak in front of other regions that may be tempted to act aggressively. What happened, and the king moved on. He learned from his mistake and became a better man and monarch as a result. Ashoka's response to warfare and the tragedy of Kalinga was the inspiration for the formulation of Dhamma. Dhamma derives from the concept, originally set down by Hinduism, of Dharma, which is one's responsibility or purpose in life, but more directly, from Buddha's use of Dharma as cosmic law and that which should be heeded. Ashoka's Dharma includes this understanding but expands it to mean general goodwill and beneficence to all as right behavior which promotes peace and understanding. After he had embraced Buddhism, Ashoka embarked on pilgrimages to sites sacred to Buddha and began to disseminate his thoughts on Dhamma. He had edicts engraved in stone throughout his empire that referenced Dhamma or explained the concept fully. Additionally, he sent Buddhist missionaries to other regions and nations including modern-day Sri Lanka, China, Thailand, and Greece. As a result, he made Buddhism a major world religion. These missionaries spread Buddha's vision peacefully since, as Ashoka had decreed, no one should elevate their own religion over anyone else's. To do so devalued one's own faith by supposing it to be better than another's, and so lost the humility necessary in approaching sacred subjects. Before the reign of Ashoka, Buddha's remains were placed in 8 stupas. Ashoka decreed that 84,000 more be built throughout the country with some part of the Buddha's remains inside each one. In this way, he thought, the Buddhist message of peace and harmonious existence between people and the natural world would be encouraged further. The number of these stupas is considered an exaggeration, but there is no doubt that Ashoka did order construction of a number of them. After reigning for almost 40 years, Ashoka died. Although he strengthened and enlarged the Mauryan Empire during his rule, it only lasted for a few decades after his death. His name was eventually forgotten, his stupas became overgrown, and his edicts, carved on majestic pillars, toppled and buried by the sands. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to like and subscribe.